What's up, guys, and welcome into Waiver Wire Sniping ahead of Week 6. Of course, this is then Waiver Wire Sniping ahead of Week 7, because while Week 6 is kicking off tomorrow, these are the players that you should be adding ahead of next week's Waiver Wire, and the rest of your league won't know what hit them. So if you're new to the strategy, in essence, what this is first off, make sure you get those Week 6 lineups set. You got to get the dub this week. That's obviously super important. But with all of the resources out there to help you with your waiver wire, what I'm trying to do is get ahead of those. So these are the players that you should be picking up to potentially stream or plug and play in your roster next week in Week 7. So if you have extra bench spots, if there was a guy that you were potentially rostering in case of emergency this week, you don't need them, drop them, use extra bench spots up, drop guys into IR if you can do that type of thing. So again, waiver wire sniping for Week 7. Here we go. There are 6 teams on bye in Week 7, so definitely a big week for bye weeks. Now, while the quantity is high, the quality is not. Not a ton of great fantasy options that you'll be missing outside of just a couple teams here, but the 6 teams on bye next week: Carolina, Cincinnati, Dallas, Houston, the New York Jets, and the Tennessee Titans. So what I generally tell people to do with this strategy as well is also look ahead when you're setting your lineups. Toggle over to Week 7 real quick. See if you can put a lineup together there as well. And if there's any gaps or any holes there, you can take a look right here as far as the players you're picking up now. Streaming quarterbacks for Week 7. I'm trying to go with Sam Howell if he's available. He had a great game against the Bears for a fantasy perspective. He has a Week 7 matchup against the Giants, and he's 37% owned. So if you're looking to stream, if you're the Burrow or Dak owner, definitely go grab Sam Howell right now. And hopefully you haven't had to start Dak Prescott this season because it's been super rough. But I like him in Week 6. But Sam Howell for Week 7 at the Giants, 37% owned. Go get him. Number 2 is Josh Dobbs at Cincinnati, 15% owned. I know he had a kind of a stinker last week, but he's been pretty good 3 of the 5 games so far this season. So that Cardinals offense going up against the Seattle Seahawks, I think he'll be a fine streamer for next week. And then Jimmy Garoppolo at the Bears. I might feel better about this next week if I'm waiting to grab my streaming quarterback. I'd like to see how he does this week against the Patriots, because the Week 7 matchup at Chicago at 16% owned, I love it. But man, he's really been up and down. So I think he could shine and be streamable. But the reason I have Howell at the top of this board is he could be a guy that if you're not loving your quarterback so far this season, not only could he be a streamer for you in Week 7 at a pinch, but he may be a good enough fantasy option going forward. He's around QB 14 right now. So, all right. Hey, Mike, see you in the chat, man. Thanks for checking me out here on this Saturday afternoon. Always good. Hopefully your turns around for you. Looking good for that first dub, man. It's been an interesting year, but still a long ways to go, even though we're 5 weeks through here. So the running back position. Now, unlike quarterbacks, tight ends, DSTs, where you're generally streaming, these are just players that should just be more rostered. They're not necessarily specific to Week 7, but you can pick these guys up for free right now. Usually my cutoff for this whole strategy is 50% owned in Yahoo leagues, but there is a good amount of players in the 50 to 60% ownership group across the next few positions that I just want to point out in case they're available. So Jaylen Warren is number 1. The Pittsburgh Steelers are on a bye this week, so he's over 50% owned on Yahoo, but he's under 60. So he may be out there in your leagues. Go take a look at Jaylen Warren. If you're on Twitter at all, you know that Warren has more PPR points than Najee Harris every single week this season so far. So number 2 is Roschon Johnson. He's going to be out this week for the Chicago Bears due to concussion, but Khalil Herbert is now on IR for Chicago, so he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. It sounds like they were kind of debating that. So Herbert should return, hopefully, when he's first eligible, but for the next 3 weeks from Week 7 forward, I think Roschon will lead the backfield there once he clears protocol. And Jeff Wilson, he's been on IR, so he's probably just been stashed in your leagues, but and he won't be activated this week for Week 6. But ahead of the Week 7 waiver wire, he's definitely a guy that I'm looking to stash. As we already know, Devin Achane or Achan or Chandler Achan, that guy. He's the stub. He's out 4 weeks. So Jeff Wilson, all kidding aside, he's a guy that he definitely need to be rostered. So the rest of these running backs, here we go. I got 6 of them for you. Joe Hubbard, 48% owned. He's going to be the bell cow this week in Week 6. Now, Carolina's heading into a bye in Week 7, so maybe that'll give Miles Sanders the time to get healthy. But I'm definitely rostering Hubbard 1 to start this week. I feel pretty confident with him as a flex option, borderline top 24 guy for Carolina. He's going to be the only guy getting carries there of fantasy significance. So holding him through the bye might be a little bit tough, but if Hubbard shows up big time in Week 6, I do think that he could be a guy that takes over that backfield. Sanders could play second fiddle. Number 2 is Donta Foreman. Again, similar to Hubbard, I think Foreman's a plug-and-play for this week. He's going to be the only running back there in Chicago to get any significant touches. So in week 6, I love it. Again, both these running backs, 48 and 44% owned. These are plug-and-play starts you can pick up right now and put in your lineup if you're weak at a position or in a flex spot. But again, Foreman, similar to Roschon, he's going to have 4 weeks to be at worst a split there. I do think Roschon's going to see the lion's share, but I think Foreman could work into a 40% workload. And again, with 6 teams on bye next week, could be somebody that you need to plug on in. A little bit more of a stash candidate, but Kendre Miller of the New Orleans Saints, 16% owned. Like Miller as a stash. Kareem Hunt, 35% owned. Browns coming off the bye. See if they work him in more. Mitchell for the Ravens, is there. The Ravens are the early game this week, so you got to get this pick in early, but he's somebody that I'd continue to stash just in case. Nobody there is really taking that job by the horns. And Keontae Ingram, 18% owned. He's been out the last couple weeks with injury. DeMarcado is likely going to be the lead back for this week, but we know James Conner is IR for 4 weeks, so it could be a timeshare there. But again, with bye weeks coming up, you're gonna want to have some depth. Wide receivers. Now, while I really like the Hubbard Foreman picks and Miller is a little bit closer there, but for wide receivers, I think there's a ton of great names here that you can stash. First off, in that 50 to 60% ownership range, so just over my threshold here, Joshua Palmer and Elijah Moore are both guys that I'm looking to add. I think Palmer should be a solid fantasy option until we start seeing that Quentin Johnston is being worked in a lot more. So the Chargers coming off the bye, even this week against the Cowboys, I'm cool rolling Palmer out as a low-end flex or wide receiver 3. And Elijah Moore getting a ton of targets, not startable, not eligible for your lineup until Deshaun Watson's back. But it does sound like there's promise that he could be back in week 7. So again, Elijah Moore, especially in PPR, is somebody that I think is just a little bit under-owned. Under 50% owned. Here you go. 6 wide receivers for you. First off, it's Josh Downs, rookie wide receiver for the Colts at 31% owned. Seeing a ton of looks with Gardner Minshew under center, and we're going to have Minshew for at least the next 4 weeks in Indianapolis as the starter. So Downs is somebody that you definitely need to look to roster, and he's going to be a great depth piece for you. I think he's a fine, low-end wide receiver 3 flex option right now with Minshew under center. The next few guys here are just kind of flyer options that I just want to have stashed on my bench. I don't think they're startable over the next few weeks, but definitely stashable down over the next month just to see. Now, these next 2 guys on here are rookie wide receivers that are coming off the bye week. So what I generally like to see from early teams with an early bye is take a flyer on those guys just to see if they try to be a little bit more intentional about getting these young players involved. So JSN 49% owned and Quentin Johnston 31% owned. I think Johnston has maybe a little bit clearer path to playing time, but I just think JSN's the more talented player, so that's why I have him ranked above. But they're pretty much neck and neck in a very similar situation. Number 4 is Jameson Williams, who's already back from the suspension, reduced to 4 games. Now, when you look at Jameson Williams at 49% owned, he might not be available in your league. And we saw, they definitely eased him back. But again, somebody that I'm just looking to take a flyer to see if they work him in more. Also from the Lions, Josh Reynolds. If Laporta's out this week, I think Reynolds continues to be a kind of a fringe starter for you. So you can definitely look to roster him. And then number 6 here is only 9% owned. Now, you got to follow me a little bit here, but Rondale Moore we know what he is, short area target guy. That offense has actually looked pretty good this season, but I think Moore has the potential to be getting some carries there for the Arizona Cardinals with James Conner out. Big question marks with DeMarcado and Keontae Ingram, obviously, at the running back position. So I think Moore could work into, maybe 30 rushing yards a game. That might be a nice floor for a PPR starter down the stretch here if you have bye week issues. Tight ends, again, 50 to 60% ownership group, just above my threshold. Take a look just to make sure if Logan Thomas is available in your league. He is obviously coming off a big game last Thursday night in week 5. Pat Freiermuth injured, but with the Steelers on the bye, hoping maybe he might come back. It looks like that it was a 2 to 4 week injury for Freiermuth, so he could be back in week 7. And then Zach Ertz, I think is, again, I'm just putting him here not because I love him, but I do think he'd be a better ad than anybody in the under 50% group there. So Mike in the chat, Amon-Ra St. Brown back in the lineup this week for Detroit. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be good to go. He practiced this week. Last week, he was a DNP all week, and then not really a surprise. He was, inactive. So it sounds like St. Brown's going to be good to go for the Lions. So if St. Brown and Laporte are back out there, I think it definitely caps any upside that you could see with Reynolds or Jameson Williams. But both St. Brown and Laporte a little bit banged up. So again, just flyer options I would stash on the end of my bench. But tight end streamers for week 7. Luke Musgrave coming off the bye at Denver, 19% owned. He's seen good volume there. That offense has sputtered just a bit, but I think he's your best option. Number 2 is Hunter Henry, 49% owned versus Buffalo. We know what that New England passing offense has been. It's been rough. And Jonnu Smith continues to see a ton of targets, 18% owned at Tampa Bay. Those are your streaming options: Musgrave, Henry, Smith at the tight end position. And wrapping it up with the DST. Number 1's Washington at the Giants, 32% owned. That offense has been extremely horrible, tons of sacks to go around. So I think Washington could be solid. This week, they are playing Atlanta in Atlanta. I don't think that's horrible. So if you don't love your DST for this week, or maybe they're heading into a bye anyway, you could just pick up Washington and go ahead and play them. I might consider doing that with the Cowboys defense as an example. They're extremely highly owned. I don't usually carry defenses through their bye unless they are somebody that I know for sure is going to get scooped right back up. Cowboys this week play the Chargers coming off the bye, and then they're on the bye themselves in week 7. So like Washington, as an example, feel comfortable with playing them against Desmond Ridder. You could get a 2-week start out of that Washington Commanders defense. Number 2, the Green Bay Packers. They'll be coming off the bye week playing in Denver, 18% owned. We all saw how that offense looked for the Broncos. And then number 3, I like the Rams. They're going to be playing Pittsburgh in week 7, 11% owned. That offense is sputtered, and I don't expect it to get too much better off the bye, even with Deontay Johnson coming back. So there you have it, boys. Appreciate you guys checking out this show. Again, waiver wire sniping every Saturday right here on the Dynasty Warzone YouTube channel. But I'll be back next week. Again, get those lineups set, but take a look ahead. Check out your week 7 roster just to see, because there's going to be a lot of holes, a lot of bye weeks. So get ahead of your league mates, waiver wire sniping. Catch you guys next week. We'll see you.